Hi, this is Darren from SimNation. Hopefully everyone can see this. And okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Sorry about that, everyone. I unfortunately had some issues with my technical setup. So for everyone, this is the GMPFL draft for our inaugural season. GMPFL, of course, is a Draft Day Sports Pro Football 2024 league with kind of a twist to it. So the twist is that the different coaches act more as owners than as head coaches. So no playbooks. They have to use the custom playbooks. Now they can modify their teams and choose to kind of set the strategies, set the depth charts, and things like that. The really two types of coaches that will be in this league: the ones who want to do that, and then the more hardcore ones, where they're going to let the head coach or offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator set their depth chart and everything else. So I'm going to go ahead and upload, and then go ahead and get the draft started, and then we can start moving. So. Um, and check just real quick to make sure that everyone can hear this, and then we'll go from there. And if anybody's on, if you can do a quick check in the chat, just let me know if you can hear me. Otherwise, I will assume that you can, and we'll kind of go from there because I can see on my stream mic that it's working. So I'm going to go ahead and import the files, and we'll go ahead and load the draft screen and then go ahead and get started. The first couple of picks are all going to be CPU anyways, so make sure that's always a problem, but hopefully that means a lot of people are going to be here. But so let's go ahead and advance into the draft, and then I'll talk a little bit about the draft class. Sorry for kind of the, well, I'll be quiet for a second. Okay. So I always try to go quiet during that scene. But we're into the draft. Gonna kind of talk a little bit preliminarily about just the draft class in general. Um, so I've seen the draft class. For disclosure, I am not a coach in this league. I am not an owner in this league, so I am allowed to look at everything. And I intentionally did it this way, mostly just because there's some things I want to try to do with the draft and other things throughout the course of this league that me being an owner would create a conflict of interest. In the WWPF, I can't do these things because I am a owner. I own the Steelers in that league. So therefore, looking at the classes and stuff, modifying the classes, I just can't do that in that league. Um, so I know who the good players are and who the bad players are, and I try to convey some of that through the big boards I put up. In the WWPF, it's a little bit more of a guess because, again, I don't know what I don't know, and a lot of that's based off what they did in SNCFL. Um, but in this league, I will tell you that this defensive line is pretty strong this year. So if you're looking for someone on the defensive line, especially defensive end, there's some game changers. Linebacker is okay, not great, but wide receiver is pretty deep. In the first round, quarterback could be in play. Um, there's a big drop off though that happens after the first 4 or 5 quarterbacks go. You're not going to see really great quarterbacks at that level. And then, of course, in the defensive backfield, there's quite a bit of strength. And then on the offensive line, specifically tackle and center are pretty strong. So I am going to pick for the CPU, mostly just because in the past I've a lot of times seen the CPU do some really awful things, and I'm trying to avoid that right now. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I will tell you that my favorite player in this draft, just right from the beginning, and this is just based on what I've seen, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily the best player in the draft, is probably going to be Curtis Hurley, the defensive end out of Tennessee. Probably second favorite is Henry Driscoll, who's the wide receiver out of Texas San Antonio. And then third would probably be Robert Oden, who's the tackle out of Clemson. So those three, I think, are truly special. Now, there was a tight end in this draft I will talk about just real quick at the beginning named Joe McCool, who's a tight end out of Clemson. This dude is, if you're looking for a game-changing tight end, think like Winslow. Uh, um, I'm struggling on the spot, but he is going to be a game changer as a tight end. So just keep that in mind as you go through this. With Pittsburgh, we're going to go ahead and get started. I will pick, I think our first human is going to be up somewhere around, well, I'll check each time. But with Pittsburgh, I know that they're not a human team, they're a CPU team. The Colts are also, if I remember correctly, going to be a CPU team. I think the Bills are Cotton. So number 3 pick is a human, and then Tennessee, if I remember correctly, is also a CPU team. So we'll see our first human pick at number 3. So gonna look here real quick, and I'm gonna see who they want to go after. I don't see any trades to get the number 1, so we're good there. And if you're part of the league and you're drafting, remember there is a channel in Slack, GMPFL Draft, that you'll log your pick in. So I'm acting like I haven't done this in a long time. So we'll go to War Room, and they want to choose Michael Goodman. Let me just check here real quick and make sure. Nah, I don't know who their quarterback is, but I'm not going to overrule it. I'll let it go. That's weird. Why is it? There we go. Okay. So the first pick will be Michael Goodman, who is the quarterback out of Michigan. I'm probably not going to allow that one to go. So we'll take a quick look. Michael Goodman, of course, was the highest rated quarterback I had on the board. On a scale of 10, he's got an arm of a 10 and accuracy of 10. Now, just bear in mind, with Fog of War, a 10 does not mean 100. It means somewhere between 90 to 100, whereas 9 can mean 80 to 90. It could even be above 90. That's one of the beauties of Fog of War, but Goodman coming into this was someone I thought could go number 1. I didn't think that the Steelers would actually go after him, but I'm going to let the CPU do that. So as you can see, threw for 3,284 yards. A lot of you think that is very low, but bear in mind that the feeder to this league is GMCFL, who just had 1 season. So that's a single season stat. So that's fairly good. Indianapolis is up next. We're going to take a look at them. And just see what they need. And everyone, I'm bouncing between different things. So if I don't catch your comment fast, just bear with me. And let me do this since I'm doing this all by myself. I'll get that in a second. So Indianapolis needs a quarterback. What else do they need? It's gonna suck if both quarterbacks go in the first two picks, but that's real life. They actually need a quarterback. So go back to War Room. They want Jimmy Bryson, who's not a bad pick. I'm just gonna let the CPU do that. And then I'll give Cotton a chance here in a second. I'm gonna get caught up. Draft recap. So our first two picks are quarterbacks. Jimmy Bryson, of course, is the quarterback that's out of Miami, Ohio. Good career there for him. And if you look at his profile, very strong arm, good intelligence, accuracy. I actually valued Bryson higher than Goodman. Goodman, I think, is more pro ready than Bryson is, but they're both really good quarterbacks. Now, over time, you may not see this quality of quarterback, but it's a good start. So we'll give Cotton the customary 5 minutes, and I'll let him know he's on the clock. Cotton. Okay, so get those out of the way. I'm just checking real quick, and you can't see it on the screen because I'm looking at my chat just to make sure that I think Cotton told me he had a list, but he also might be here. So we'll put this up. Cotton. Okay. So from a big board perspective, like I mentioned, Hurley I think is a generational talent. Para is a top 5 in my book. So is Larson. Um, Ash I think is a really good quarterback. I'm not sure he's a 3 pick. But again, if that's who they want. And Cotton goes with wide receiver James Larson, who is the wide receiver out of Wisconsin. I think this is a pretty solid pick. We'll draft James Larson, and we will show what he looks like. So really good strength. He's 5'11", so he's not a big wide receiver, but that strength is generally good. Pretty agile, got good intelligence, great speed, great hands, really good endurance, knows his position well. Also, apparently could play tight end if you wanted him to. No traits. He's a whining survival, but in his one single season at Wisconsin, he had over 1,300 yards and 17 touchdowns. That's a solid pick, Cotton. Tennessee is up next, just bouncing around. Tennessee is CPU. I think I already established that. Okay. So who do they want? I'm not going to let them take a quarterback. Actually, I'm going to look first. So with Tennessee, they definitely don't need a quarterback, so they're not going to get one. They could use a guard. Really, they could use a guard. Maybe a safety or cornerback, but let's see what the CPU wants to do here. they want to go with Gagnon. I'm probably going to let them have Gagnon. So Tennessee will select Gilberto Gagnon, who is the cornerback out of Oregon. And let's go Hill. Take a look at him. So Gilberto Gagnon, no big traits. Pretty decent. Good agility, good intelligence, really good speed, good hands, and looks like he can play multiple positions and has a great personality trait. So it's a pretty solid pick for them. Let me go ahead and list that out. Tennessee chooses Gilberto. I'm pretty sure I'm misspelling that, but. And up next will be the Los Angeles Rams, who are a human control team. I just need to check and see which one. So that is Aaron. Let me check and see if Aaron is on. Okay. So it's interesting that, so kind of when I looked at this originally, I thought that the top pick would be Michael Goodman, just because Pittsburgh had it. I actually thought Indianapolis would go with a free safety or defensive end. I was pretty sure Cotton was going to go wide receiver, and of course, it was really a competition between Larson and Driscoll. So, but we'll let Aaron have a chance to take this pick. And in general, we give 5 minutes, unless someone has told me they have a list and won't be there, and then I'll pick almost immediately. But I think if we look at the needs that LA has, so I think what you almost immediately see is they're pretty well stacked. They need a kicker, but you're not going to pick a kicker in the first round. They don't really need help on the defensive end side, but that would probably be the logical pick based on what they have. Cornerback, I would also argue cornerback is what they need. So, but we'll wait and see what comes up. But generally speaking, if the person hasn't put a list in, and you'll know if there's a list because these three will be the same, I'm going to let the CPU pick it unless the CPU is going to pick someone I know is pretty bad. And at that point, I won't do that to the person. So big board wise, I think Michael Goodman's off the board. We have James Lawson off the board. And Para. So, okay. And Aaron will take Roderick Para, who is the cornerback out of Georgia. And let's go ahead and draft him. Go Hill. Draft recap. So, Roderick Para, out of Georgia, has 10 agility, 10 speed. That's really good. Kind of middling in the tackling and hands, but I would argue his knowledge of the position probably makes him a really, really good person. In his career, he had 62 tackles and 4 interceptions. That's a pretty solid pick, though. So I think Baltimore, if I remember correctly, is Rick. And I know Rick had a thing, but I'll go ahead and put him on the clock. Just double check. I know he had something, and I also have his board, so we'll give him a few minutes. So two cornerbacks, two quarterbacks, and a wide receiver in the first round, and probably the two people I think are the best prospects in the draft are still on the board. So, yeah, I'll give it a minute. And Rick has a clear number one based on what he sent me. So we'll go back to the war room. Um, I know someone asked me this offline. I don't always put a lot of faith into the CPU's top 10, round one, round two, round three. Um, Mostly just because sometimes the CPU is just basing it off overall. And while overall is important to a certain extent, it's not the most important thing out there. So um, it's why in like WWPF you'll see people like me, people like Peter, Spoof drafting people who may say round three or round four and round one, only because there's a much better uh, person out there than what the computer is saying is the projection. One of these days I got to figure out how to do that. So I know Stuart's probably really happy that Michigan got the number one pick. For those who don't know, Stuart is in multiple leagues, and he is probably one of the biggest Michigan fans outside of John LeBlanc I've ever met. John used to be a commissioner at the bowl bound leagues we have and was really big. So I'm going to go ahead and make the pick for Rick because he was pretty clear on who he wanted. Yeah, I think how old is Hurley's 23? That's a good point, Aaron. Um, I think 23 is not too old for defensive end. There's certain positions that seem to hold better. 23 for running back, I'd probably be turned off. And we'll make the pick for Rick since I have his board. Rick is going to pick Henry Driscoll, the wide receiver from UT San Antonio. Let me just double check and make sure I didn't miss what he put in chat. Yep, that's his number one. So make sure I got that. Draft Henry Driscoll. So we'll go ahead and do this. Uh, there we go. Next one seems like pretty clear who they want. So Henry Driscoll is, I think, probably the best wide receiver in the draft. There are some concerns I have with him though, but as you can see, 10 agility. He's 6 foot tall. Doesn't have great strength. His intelligence isn't all that great, but when you have probably the 90s in agility and speed, along with high 80s, probably or somewhere in the 80s with hands, that's pretty good. His endurance kind of turned me off a little bit to him. Again, 14, almost 1,500 yards at UT San Antonio. The competition was what I was worried about with him. Up next, we have Philadelphia. Philadelphia is, of course, I think, Don Lucky. Um, so Philadelphia is now on the clock. Sorry, Stuart. And definitely Don has a list. Yeah, I liked Henry Driscoll more than James Larson, although I think I rated James Larson higher. Um, he seems more like a complete player than Larson did. The difference, I think, in real life would be the Larson is playing better competition than uh, Driscoll is. So we'll give this a minute. It's a formality because Don has a Don has a list. It's pretty clear who he's picking. Um, I'll just go ahead and draft it for him. So Curtis Hurley is the defensive end I mentioned at the top of the show. Um, and let me real quick. Huh. So he was the person I thought that could go number one in the draft, and just didn't because Pittsburgh wanted a quarterback instead of a defensive end. There it is. Sorry, someone asked me to get them the link, so I'm getting them the link. Da, da, da. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just pick him. We'll just do it, just be on the safe side. So Curtis Hurley will come off the board. That was Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken. And now on the board is... Oh, I need to show that. Sorry. Is the LA Chargers, which, if I remember correctly, LA is going to be Kevin. So he's a bull rusher. I would look past that because he's so much more than that. But 10 strength, which means, again, it doesn't mean 100, but he's strong. His agility's not all that good. His intelligence is really good for a defensive end. He's a solid tackler, so he's going to wrap up, and he's got really good speed. This probably means he's somewhere between 85 and 90 for speed. Knows his position really well. Doesn't have the greatest of personality, but you could argue that with this guy's physical stats, Don got himself a really good person, though. So LA is up, and that would be Kevin. Let me just post that. Kevin beat me to it. So this one will be the one I want to kind of see. So tight end, where are you, McCall? So Joe McCall. Anyone want to take a bet on his stats before I show you? We'll go and draft him. And let's see, he'll go back over here. Cool. So I will tell you for tight end, his stats are ungodly. But Kevin, this is what you're getting. So 9 agility, 8 intelligence, 9 speed, 9 hands, 7 pass blocking, 4 run blocking, 9 endurance. Not a really good person at the end of the day, but he is. I'm trying to think of a tight end to compare him to that isn't in prison. So, but yeah, that is probably one of the best tight ends that you will probably find around. So that's a great pick, Kevin. So definitely think you got a very, very strong tight end, though. So up next is going to be Miami. Miami is CPU. I will CPU that one. They're going to take Mark Ash. I'm going to see if they actually need Mark Ash. They don't need Mark Ash. They're not taking Mark Ash. They'll take a corner. Who was next big on corner on the big board? Big board wise. So Para's off the board. Um, Ganyon's off the board. They'll take Goforth, who's out of Massachusetts. Um, okay, so next up will be Tampa Bay. I believe Tampa Bay is also CPU, so I'll make that pick here in a second. George Goforth, of course, is a cornerback out of Massachusetts. He's got good size, really good agility, really good speed. Um, Overall, really solid corner. He's a press corner too, which makes it even more interesting because he's going to get bonuses when he's in man to man. Tampa Bay needs a running back. So I'm going to go with Hayward because they're just 2 out of 3. Let's see, George Hayward, Greg Hayward. It's pretty high to take Hayward, but see what he looks like. Let me clean this up a little bit real quick. So Chargers took him. Dolphins take George Goforth, cornerback. Buccaneers. Assuming I can actually take Greg Hayward, linebacker. And check in real quick, see if Atlanta is JP. So I don't know if JP's on, but I'll check. So Atlanta's on the clock. Atlanta is a JP on the clock. Let's see here, but let's look at Hayward real quick. I think Hayward is a decent linebacker. I don't think he's a great linebacker. Um, as you can see, he's got good stats. I'm trying to remember. I had a hang up on him, and I can't remember what it is. This is a problem with doing this board. I think one of my big hang-ups with Hayward is I think he's an inside linebacker. And he'll do great in short schemes, and he's probably really good at defending things. But I think as he drops back into coverage and other things, he's going to struggle a little bit. Or getting to the edge, I think, may be an issue for him. Um, but I mean, tackling wise, he's gonna drop anybody that he gets a hold of. He knows his position well. His intelligence is also lower than I would like in a linebacker. But 94 tackles, 1 sack. He's out of UVA. So not a horrible pick, but not a great pick either. I don't know what I just clicked, but we'll give this a moment. We'll see if he actually has he does. Or either that or we'll give it a moment. Mark Ash is, and just so everyone knows, I'm not intentionally dropping Mark Ash. It's just I'm not going to let CPU take a quarterback when they already have quarterbacks. It's something I started doing in WWPF this last season. And it's just something I want to try to avoid. But with Mark Ash, I like him as a quarterback. I think the challenge I had with him is he can make deep throws, but I worry about his accuracy on the deep ball. And unlike the first 2 quarterbacks who were kind of mobile as well, and I didn't talk about that, um, he's not as mobile as they are, so he's probably going to get sacked more as a result. But there's nothing horrible about him as a quarterback. It's just he's not one of the better ones in my eyes. So We'll give it another minute, and then we will make a pick. So if you see the mouse jumping around, just so everyone knows, is I'm switching between screens just to make sure I catch any comments made. So when you see that, that's just me doing that. Okay, JP's around, so I'm not going to do anything with this pick. So who I like still on the board, Robert Oden, great tackle. Mark Ash is a good quarterback. I wouldn't look past him. I like Chad Newman, the free safety out of LSU. From the big board that I did earlier, I think the people still in the up there is Nathaniel Lyles, the free safety out of Tennessee, still there. Um, if you want to talk about a shutdown defensive back, Nathaniel Lyles is probably the closest thing to it in this draft. Running back wise, you got Ricky Michelle out of Oregon State, who's got home run speed. Talked about Odin already. Um, Sherry is a pretty good safety out of UTSA. The only problem I worry about him is he's not very smart. Dutton, if you're looking for a center out of Stanford, is probably one of the best ones on the board. I talked about Newman. If you're looking for a wide receiver, Gary Farrell still out there. Um, he's not going to be great in the short passing game, but if you put him in medium to long, I think he's going to do really well. And then you have a couple other people out there as well that I think all would be good. Let's see what the pick is. Free safety Chad Newman. Okay, let's do that. And with that, we are now up to New Orleans. Let me check here real quick. New Orleans is CPU, so I'll take care of that in a second. So Chad Newman, free safety, 80 tackles, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery. He's of course out of LSU. 9 agility, 7 intelligence, 8 tackling, 10 speed, 7 hands, 7 endurance. He can play both cornerback and free safety fairly well. And outside, he's not going to be a team leader, but he's got a really good disposition regardless. That's a really solid pick at 11. So JP with a really good pick there. We're going to look at the Saints real quick, see what they need. They don't need a quarterback. Could use a tight end. Could definitely use a wide receiver. And a linebacker. So let's see what they want. I'll let them have them. CPU pick. So go Hill. They will take Calderon. So this was the Saints. And now up is the Lions. And the Lions are Stewart. You're up, pal. And we'll take a look at him real quick. It's not bad. He's the wide receiver out of Purdue, 6 strength, 6'4", 207. That's his strength's not great for his size, but agility of 8, which probably means he's in the 70s in agility. Intelligence probably in the 60s. Tackling, speed, hands, really good there. Endurance is really good. Wide receiver skill is really good. Over 1,200 yards at Purdue, which is of course in the Big Ten. So really solid pick there for the CPU. And Stewart picks linebacker Alexander Bravo. Okay, let's go here. Open war room. Clear. Linebacker. So he's the linebacker out of North Texas. Stuart, if you're on, any thoughts about what you think you just drafted? Okay, open draft recap. So Seattle's now on the clock, and that'll be Kurt. I think Kurt just joined. Let me bounce over here. Let's see what we got here. So he's a coverage linebacker, concerned rebel, 81 tackles, 1 sack. Of course, out of North Texas, so he's a mean green. 8 strength, 9 agility, 6 intelligence, 8 tackling, 9 speed, 5 hands, 9 endurance, 10 linebacker. Also could play defensive end. It's actually got the size. He could probably do it too. So that's a really solid pick. Great pick though. So I think Kurt is now up. Let me put that up. Never mind, I don't need to do that now. Looks like he drafted. Oh, never mind, that's any ideas or any thoughts from Chad about who so far is the best pick on the board? Yeah, Stuart, I like your pick overall. That's one of the better ones in this draft so far. And generally, outside of one pick, I think that uh, so far the picks have been solid. Um, I definitely don't think that there's been a lot of research and a lot of input into it. So I think picking wise, it's been really good. So let's go back and look at him. I mean, outside of leadership, I don't see a problem with him as a linebacker. I think there is a linebacker I think that's better than him in this draft, but between Hayward and Bravo, I think those are 2 linebackers that are really going to be good. We can go back and look. McCall. I don't think McCall did. I think if McCall had traits or flags, it would be like Diva. Um, but if he had seriously like receiving tight end, the dude would be like uncoverable. Um, and just so everyone knows, there's also hidden traits, right? That are will determine whether someone's a dud or not. So I'm gonna look and see here real quick. Just give it a minute. Uh, we're not at 5 minutes, so you guys will just have to listen to me talking a little bit more. Oh, it's interesting that that's what it's showing. And just want to confirm with everyone in chat, you can still see my screen okay, right? Like I'm looking at Robert Oden now. Hopefully you can see Robert Oden too. Um, this guy in my view is probably the best person on the board right now. I think next best on the board is probably going to be Would probably be more cash. Gary Farrell's high up there. Patrick Lee's another guy I look at. Robert Voss, I'm really high on him as a guard. He has a lot of great intangibles. The only knock on him is he's not as good of a pass blocker as he is a run blocker, but he's generally pretty good. Yeah, I think this league is going to be one of the more interesting ones out there because of fog of war, as well as the fact that you can't create your own playbooks. That alone, I think, equalizes the playing field that you have to use your coach's playbooks. I think the other thing that's going to be an interesting thing in this league is watching the two different types of players. The ones who are going more hardcore, who are going to focus more on letting the coaches do everything, minus the signing, the drafting, and things like that, versus those who are not going to go that route. And I don't think there's a difference between the two, by the way. I think you play the game the way you want to play it. The 1 to 10 scale is going to really mess people up. And that's one of the reasons for fog of war is it makes it a lot harder for you to know exactly what you have. Um, Now, I hope they do modify it over time. I think you could have a fog of war that's 1 to 100 where you kind of lie about the stats a little bit. But I don't think they're going to do that. So I am going to go ahead and make the pick because I don't see Kurt. And, well, I see Kurt's on. So let me see if I can't ping him here too. Uh, go down and just see how. I'll give it a minute. Okay, give it one more minute and then I will make the pick. I'm gonna just double check something. Just so everyone knows, I generally try to give everybody a chance to make their picks. So if it seems like I'm going slow or it is intentional, I am. Just because drafting is one of those areas where I kind of want people to be able to make the pick. Um, I, I think it's going to be really interesting in this league because you have a lot of heavyweights in this league who have come over. I think is Frankie. Yeah, Frankie's coaching in this league, so that'll be interesting. People finally get to see how Frankie plays. They've seen it in college, and in general, he's done a really good job in college. Shameless plug, GMCFL. Still looking for coaches. It's the same thing. I think we're into week 4 now of that season. And I'll tell you, I'm trying to do the hardcore, and both my teams are winless, which at some point I may have to just decide I'm not doing that, or I need to fire my coaches. But the same mechanic is there, except for in that case, you're acting more as the AD as opposed to the owner. But it's creating some interesting results, and maybe I'll show that in a video at some point. But so far, I would say that some of the results are not what I expected. Okay, I'm gonna go and make the pick. So let CPU do this. They're gonna choose Robert Odin, but I'm gonna choose it for him. Just make sure it doesn't go that way. So up next is the Giants, and the Giants belong to DWK. So DWK, you're on the clock. Uh, yeah, I'm enjoying it, but I'm also cringing on it so far. I'm not used to being winless, and it's a different dynamic. What team just drafted? We'll show him in a second. Seattle. Seattle selects at TWK is on the clock. Okay, Mr. Odin. 10 overall, 10 strength, not very agile, decent intelligence in the 60s probably, decent speed, 40s or 50s, pass blocking 10, run blocking 9. His endurance isn't that great, but he's a 10 tackle. His disposition kind of sucks, but you really don't want a tackle who's nice. He's a tenacious blocker, so that's definitely going to help him in the blocking schemes. Generally, I like having tackles who are just not nice people. And DWK takes wide receiver Gary Farrell. Let's make that happen for you. Gary, there he is. And up next will be the Buffalo Bills, who I believe are CPU, so I'll take care of that in a second. So DWK, Farrell is, I think, a pretty good one. Let's take a look. So no traits, but he had 910 yards, 9 touchdowns for Louisville, who of course is out of the ACC. Um, but 6 strength, 8 agility, 7 intelligence, 9 speed, 10 hands, 9 endurance, 10 wide receiver, 7 tight end. He's got really good personalities traits. That's going to be a pretty good wide receiver for the Giants. So the Bills are up next. Let me just check this real quick. Okay, so the Bills, who do they want? Let me guess. They want Ash. Nope, they want Lee. So we'll go ahead and let them choose Lee. Go back. Next up will be the Raiders. I don't remember the Raiders having anybody, and they don't. So we'll give that a second. Draft. Bills select guard Patrick Lee. Who do the Raiders want? They don't know. Yeah, let them choose. Okay, so the Raiders are going to pick Christopher Reeve. I don't know about that pick. So used to having Peter at the Raiders in the other league that I'd be like, that's a really bad pick for Peter. So up next is the Jets, and I know the Jets have a owner, so that's Cable. So and Cable definitely has a list based on what I just saw. Okay, let's look at these two gentlemen real quick. Patrick Lee, definitely who I thought was one of the better guards in this draft. 10 strength, 6 agility, 7 intelligence, 9 pass blocking, 9 run blocking, 4 speed, 6 endurance. He can play all up and down the offensive lineman, so that makes him attractive. He's a tenacious blocker. There were a lot of offensive linemen who had insane strength. I'm going to allow it for this season because teams need to be able to build out. But probably next season, Frankie and I are going to nerf a little bit some of the people coming out. Christopher Reeve is He's one of those guys I thought was pretty good from a speed and hands perspective, but was a little bit less in terms of personality and also in terms of his ability to work shorter routes. But 6'3", 200 pounds, has 60 strength at least, maybe 70, which means that he plays to his size. Agility probably in the 70s, not great on the short routes, which means he's not gonna he'll win a lot of battles just because he's 6'3", but he's not going to win as many due to his ability to cut. Intelligence is decent, speed is really good, hands is good, and endurance. Plus, he can do some run blocking if you wanted to put him at tight end. But as you can see, is his morale is great, so he loves himself essentially. But all of his other stats are not so good. 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns. So he probably really benefited from having Goodman at quarterback. So now Cable's up. Um, invite him. So let's see if Cable sent me something. He definitely has a he has a list from what I can see. So actually, I think Cable dropped if I remember correctly. Yeah, let me tell him. Okay, so go to War Room. The Jets will choose Ricky Michelle. Do that one. And where am I? No, I don't want an emoji. And now we are over to the Kansas City Chiefs, who, if I remember correctly, are Bailey, C. Bailey. Let me bounce back here real quick. Yeah, Peter, trying to remember if I broadcast this where Peter could see it. I don't think Peter would like this league. Peter loves to have the ability to modify his playbooks, and he's not going to be able to do that in this league. Let's see. So Chiefs are in. We are through 19 picks. Go to War Room. So still have a couple really good players on the board. So if you're picking later, you still have quite a bit of options out there. So I actually think it's my opinion, and I'm probably going to be wrong on this, is that I think that this type of league is actually going to make coaches a lot better players in general. Um, just because you're going to maybe gain a little bit better understanding of your coaches and also how to game plan doing some things you probably would never do. So it'll be interesting to see. I know someone asked me, I have no plans on turning a Fog of War on WWPF. Now, we are going to right size the player base uh, from the draft going forward to ensure that we kind of dial it back a little bit with how strong the league has gotten from its players coming out of SNCFL. Um, so that'll be interesting to see. And Frankie and I still got to work through how that's going to look. So at some point, we'll have a little bit more about that. we'll give him a few minutes. I'm gonna check and see if he'd sent me something. He did. Give me a second. Okay, so he still got 3 more minutes to make a pick, so to kind of look at what he needs. By the way, just a reminder for everyone is once I save the draft, I am going to turn off the penalty for cuts throughout the draft. So if you want to cut players during the draft, you can do that. And the main reason is a lot of you didn't have the ability to be able to choose your teams. I'm not going to leave it on during free agency. I'm going to turn it back on. Mostly just because I think during the draft, I'll give you the ability to say, hey, look, I want to get rid of these people and be able to do that without taking the cut penalty. But once we finish up the draft, I think the cut penalty needs to be back on. The other thing is just bear in mind that the first season is going to be interesting because the player base is not that deep. Frankie and I have talked about bringing in some of the previous draft classes from SNCFL for the people who weren't drafted and potentially augmenting somewhat there as well. And also bear in mind, there were some SNCFL draft classes that were never seen in WWPF because the two leagues have had a hard time being synchronized with each other, which makes it to where sometimes you don't even see the players that were there. Like you have Douglas Finnegan, who was a running back out of Washington State, who was an insane runner, but he never made it into the draft classes because the seasons weren't in sync. And we tried to avoid making it like an all-star draft class. So I think the 5 minutes is up. I will go ahead and make the pick. I'm just going to double check and make sure the CPU is not going to do something bad to him. So let's see here. Got a lot of wide receivers. Nobody's picking a kicker. Actually, really needs a cornerback from the look of it, but doesn't really need a wide receiver. Okay, he's gonna pick Nathaniel Lyles. So let me go ahead and throw this in there. GMPFL draft. This was which team? Go back here, draft recap. So Kansas City. To select free safety Nathaniel Lyles. Minnesota's up. Who is Minnesota? So Starfinder is on the clock. Let me let him know. Okay, so Starfinder's Minnesota. Let's take a look at actually, let's go back. Um, so Nathaniel Lyles was one of the best defensive backs I felt in this class. Get no trait. He's out of Tennessee. 4 strength, 8 agility, 8 intelligence, 7 tackling, 10 speed, 10 hands. That's insane for a free safety, by the way. Which pretty much means that he probably has somewhere between 90 and 100 hands, which means you don't even want to throw the ball in his general vicinity. 5'11", he can be out-muscled relatively easily, but he can also play corner and strong safety. And he's got a solid personality, which is just going to make him really dangerous. His endurance isn't as good as it should be, but you can condition for that. So, just all in all, that's a really good pick, though. Let's bounce back. Kind of thought he would go Heil, but a lot of teams have free safeties. And again, back to the cut thing, one of the reasons why I'm allowing it is to give people some freedom to be able to draft people in this cut and then be able to have some of the rookies see playing time almost immediately. Let's see. Give Starfinder a few moments. I'm going to go back and look and see if he told me he had a list. By the way, for future drafts, if anyone wants to help me with this, feel free to let me know. I would love to have it because it's a lot more fluid. So normally when Frankie's able to do it with me, we can have one of us talking while the other one is doing something. And I apologize for the stops and starts. Is trying to do this all by myself is a little bit of a hardship. Um, but actually, I want team recap is what I want. So he could use a quarterback actually. Because Starfinder could use quite a few things. I know someone just DM'd me and asked me a question. Generally, I mean, I could go into everyone's roster and I could tell you what I think you need. I don't often do that only for the reason that I prefer to let people try to do what they want to do and do their thing. Uh, I have thoughts around how things work in the game and I build on those thoughts, but generally when I look, I tend to draft for need first, and if I don't have need, I draft for best available. And that's normally how I do it with Pittsburgh and WWPF because they traditionally don't have needs because I'm dealing with the needs in free agency. Um, and then I will draft generally who's the best available in my eyes. So we'll give this one more moment. Let me skip back over here. And I don't see anything from Starfinder. Go back up and see if he said something. Anytime works for me. Okay. We'll give it. He's got a minute by my clock. So I think at this point on this board, if you need a quarterback, Ash is going to be the best quarterback on the board. I'm not high on Denning. I am actually high on Morris. If we look at Morris, he's got incredible accuracy, unique intelligence. His problem is Morris to me is a really good short to medium passer, so he'd do great in a West Coast offense. But if you're running a vertical or spread, I don't think he's going to be as good. I'm just not high on Denning at all. I think Denning is he's probably going to have a potentially really good ability to be accurate in the short passing game, but I think his intelligence is going to be a detriment. He's got perfect size, though, is the only thing I would say about him. And okay, we are going to make the pick for Starfinder. Uh, So go back to recap. Up next is the Commanders of Washington. I don't think Udo's on, um, because I think that Udo's in Germany, so he is likely watching fireworks right now. So, so let's do this. Vikings. Yeah, he's on. So we'll take a look at that while Udo makes his pick. As you can see, Mark Ash, quarterback out USC, decent arm, good intelligence, good accuracy, good endurance, strength and agility. He's not a runner, but overall he's just solid. Definitely a good pick. Uh, Clutch quarterback. For those who don't know what it means that in the final like 2 minutes of the game, or the final 2 minutes of the half, this dude's just gonna go off, and he's got the stats to do it. So he's gonna come through in the clutch, which is why he's a clutch quarterback instead of like a gunslinger. So really good, solid pick. Someone you can build a franchise around. He's got good size. He's a pocket passer. He's not a runner. And we'll see what Udo's gonna pick. Um, just let him know. I think he already knows, but let's see what Udo had. So I think he was in pick Alex Cassidy, who's not a bad pick. I think this is the first time in a while I've seen all the top 10s go this early. Let's look at Cassidy just real quick. I'm not going to pick him. So Cassidy again, very strong. I think I said that about him. He's a great tackler. Bear in mind, all these stats are relative to the position they play and the averages for their position. So when you see unique speed, it doesn't mean 90 if he's a defensive tackle. It may mean that he's in the upper 70s or he could be in the 80s. Because it's all going to be tied back relative to the average for that position. So, let's see what else we got here. Take a quick look and see what I had to say about him on the big board. I think he's one of the ones I talked about on the big board. Big nose tackle with elite strength and solid stats everywhere else except for brains and vision. He's definitely lacking though. Yeah, I think it shows. His intelligence is terrible. For defensive tackle, that means he's really low. Um, and agility, terrible, also means he's really low. Agility is not a huge thing for defensive tackles to have, especially if you're going to put him at the nose position. Because at the nose position, it's more strength because he's essentially bull rushing the center. Um, so I really think that this guy is a really, really good, would be a really good person to pick. And I'll give it, Udo's got like 2 more minutes. Um, let's see who else. Let's see what he needs. And again, these aren't real needs, by the way, because in theory I'd be looking at his team. I'm just trying not to do that because there's a lot of shifting. He does need a defensive tackle actually to have depth, but he could also use a linebacker or a cornerback, wide receiver. Again, your play style define how many you need. Because I rotate a lot of my players, you'll always notice I probably have double whatever the minimum is. This league does have more defined set minimums because I'm trying to avoid having the CPU pick people in certain positions. And drama. Okay, so it's been 5 minutes. I'm gonna make the pick. Udo has a board, so I'm not worried about this. I'll give him 30 seconds, and I'm gonna make the pick. Make the pick. Team recap. So Frankie is up. I think Frankie's still in North Carolina. I'll just put it out there real quick, just in case he's not. Otherwise, I would wonder why he wasn't on with me. But um, this should be interesting. I think in real life, Frankie is actually um, I think he is a Patriots fan. Whereas, like in real life, for those you don't know, I am actually a Steelers fan. I grew up around the Steelers. I lived there in the late 70s. And my father was a big Pittsburgh fan because he was from Pittsburgh. But I never liked Penn State, or I did like Pitt when Dan Marino was still. But I grew up. I grew up as a Maryland fan. I've been a Maryland fan since I was like 4 years old. Which means I'm used to feeling a lot of pain. So let's see here. Commanders select defensive tackle Alex Cassidy, and we'll take a quick look at him. Alex Cassidy is 9 overall, 10 strength, really strong, which is great for a nose. Let's see if he's a nose tackle. He's not. Well, he can play the nose. 7 agility, 5 intelligence, 8 tackling, 7 speed, 4 hands, 7 endurance. Uh, he's really going to play defensive tackle. I mean, with how big he is, he's not really going to be a defensive end. But really solid pick here, especially for defensive tackle. I do think that there is a defensive tackle out there that's better than him, but it's just a solid pick, especially at 21. So we'll give Frankie a minute or two, and then I'll see. Let me go down here and see if Frankie. Okay, let's see what Mr. Frankie needs. I don't think he has a list, so quarterback, running back, wide receiver, for centers. His team is pretty solid from a needs perspective. Hmm. I'll give it a second, and then I think I know who we will pick for him. Just curious. Yeah, of course you do that. I'm just curious what Frankie has. So, I don't know why the CPU would think he needs a quarterback. His offensive line's not all that good. It's okay. How did he get a 9-speed tight end already? I wonder if he moved him. Wide receiver. He's got good wide. He's got one good wide receiver. His cornerbacks are pretty decent. His defensive line is decent. Strong safety's weak, but they got good hands. I mean, overall, it's not a bad team. Wide receiver could be better, so let's go back into the draft. Give it one more minute, and we'll go. I don't get the quarterback thing because none of those quarterbacks are going to be as good as he probably has. That is one area that I wish that they would hopefully at some point fix. Is how it assesses things because, like in this case, there's no reason for you to burn a first round pick on a quarterback that arguably is not going to be better than what you have. Um, I think wide receiver, there are people that are better than what he has. Um, I think that there are probably a lot of things better than, in some regards, than what he has. But if I look at my big board with who's still out there, that is probably worth it. You have Sherry, who's the strong safety from UTSA, Dutton, the center from Stanford. Wide receiver is kind of taking a hit so far, which is what I expected. Hassan Calderon was a good wide receiver. He's already been picked. Oh, well, I'm going to pick for him because I think he's still in North Carolina, so we're going to go with a wide receiver. We'll go Richard Alfred out of Florida State. Kind of irony because Frankie has Florida State in the GMCFL. So Green Bay is now going to be on the clock, and Green Bay belongs to the CPU, so I'll get that. Let me go here. Frankie will give me a nail for if he thinks I picked badly for him. Patriots pick wide receiver Richard Alfred. I'm going to make a slew of picks here real quick, guys, just because I want to keep moving us through this. Cleveland is bio, so he's human, so the next pick is mine to make. So Green Bay needs a, doesn't have many needs, just depth it looks like. Who's CP want to pick? Let that happen. So draft recap, team recap. Let me tell Bio he's on the clock. And let me go back here, draft recap, and then we'll look at these two wide receivers since we had two wide receivers go in a row. Packers select. Okay, so Alfred, of course, is out of Florida State. 9 agility, 5 intelligence. That's what I thought. He has questionable field vision, but 10 speed, 9 hands, 9 endurance, great knowledge of his ability. This is just going to hurt him a little bit, whereas this is going to help offset it, but it won't be enough. But he's a possession wide receiver, so and then he has really good stats. So um, yeah, I think he's going to be fine for Frankie. So it's a good pick. Griffin Seward, um, 6'3", he plays with size, has good agility, solid in speed and hands. Endurance is not quite that good. Intelligence is okay. He's one of these guys who can play both wide receiver and tight end. Um, his personality is not overly great, but it's a solid pick for Green Bay. Jump back hill. Bio may not be on, but he's got a board. And so making after the draft, we'll go back to the normal sim schedule where each round will play out through the sim. I'm trying not to do the everyday thing that burnt me out. Doing it for WWPF, and I may not even do that for WWPF anymore. That was kind of insane. We're trying to run a sim every day. Of course, during that period, I also had COVID, so that made it even worse. But if this is who Bio is going to pick, this is a solid pick. I like Voss a lot. Let's see what it says, and I'll give him about a few minutes because I know he has a board. Where'd I put Voss? I don't think I had him high. Like, for instance, like Cassie was like, I think 49th on my board, but I think he is really a strong defensive tackle. I forget what Voss was on my board. He may not, he was like 26th on my board. So overall, a good blocker with the muscles to throw linemen around, knows where to be, but may struggle to get there due to poor footwork and conditioning. So generally, when I say poor footwork, I'm talking about his agility. Conditioning is normally endurance. Um, so if you ever want a key to what I mean when I do my big boards in Slack, that's if I say poor footwork, that's almost always agility. Sometimes could mean speed, but generally if he's slow, I'm just going to call him slow. So I mean, if that's who he's going to pick, that's a solid pick. Yep. Uh, so Aaron, you set the draft board for rounds 2 to 7, and essentially when the CPU does the pick, it'll pick from your board. If the board is exhausted, then the CPU will do that. We'll do a round each sim. So like Tuesday's sim will be round 2, Thursday's sim will be round 3. I may get a little bit more aggressive where I say that because I'm doing a sim on Friday and Sunday for WWPF, I may do those days. I'm just trying not to do every day. I can't. But at the end of this sim, I will process all trades. There were no trades for first round picks, so I didn't process those. But I will before I end the sim. And I'll respond also in Slack. I'm being lazy. So we're going to go and make this pick. So Robert Voss, BioEgo gets a really good guard, I think. Jacksonville, I don't think Jacksonville has a coach. They don't. So who's after Jacksonville is Arizona. I think Arizona's the same. No. Coach Dallas is DP. I don't know if DP's on. Cincinnati is CPU. Denver. Okay. Denver is when we have the next one. So these two are definitely CPU, so I can make those picks. Let me go ahead and put this in chat. Big board. Oops, wrong channel. Bounce, select, guard. Okay. Open war room. Okay, so DP is on the clock. Let me catch up real quick. Jaguars, select, tackle, Lawrence, McMillan, Cardinals, Thou. There we go. So give DP a few minutes. Let's see if he has a board. He does not. Okay, so where are we? Waiting on DP. So let's look at Mr. DP's team while we wait. Is it still or I forever am not a Cowboy fan? So I'll have to remember that. Let's see, he's got pretty decent quarterbacks. His running backs are pretty solid. He's got two good guards and what I would call quality backup. His tackles are good. His centers are good. Tight end, decent. And again, this 9 is likely an 80. It's not a 90. I'd be shocked if it was, but um, he's got decent speed at wide receiver, just not a lot of it. He's got decent corners. Well, not so decent because this could be an 80 or it could be a 70. Linebacker wise, he likes speed at linebacker if I remember correctly. He's got some decent speed though, not great. Defensive tackle, free safeties. He's got a decent team. I don't agree with what the CPU is trying to make him draft because I would argue that even though he needs depth, he's got uh, he's got some strength though. I don't think Joe Hardman is probably going to be a good pick either way. So, what did I say about Hardman? I don't think I even rated Hardman. Yeah, I did. Overlooked by many, he should rank higher than he is. And I think Hardman is a starter, and he's already got depth though. Goforth would have actually probably been a really good pick hill for him. Silverman, who's a wide receiver out of Stanford, is a really good pick around this time. Um, for someone like DP who loves to throw long, and I don't know if he's going to do that in Dallas, Will Rinaldi, who's the wide receiver out of Duke, is another really great pick hill. Oh, I never looked at Thal on them. I would have said that Melvin Thal would be a great pick hill, but he just went. So McMillan is a really good tackle. This is a solid pick for the Jaguars. So 10 strength, decent agility. Speed sucks, but again, he's got enough agility to compensate for the speed. 10 pass blocking, 9 run blocking. He's a solid blocker all around. And a tenacious blocker is going to help him have some bonuses. Melvin Thau, who's out of Florida, is decent agility, good intelligence, really good speed in hands. His endurance is a little bit of a concern because of he's not going to be able, he won't be able to be on the field all the time. 10 wide receiver, but at 3.6 million a year, it's not bad. That's actually a solid pick. So go back to the war room. And let's just see. I know something's going on in WPF, but I'm not going to look at that. And I'm going to make this pick just to keep moving. I'm going to go with Ronaldo. Wide receiver Will Ronaldo. Okay. And if I remember correctly, the next team up is also CPU before we get to Denver. So we'll just go ahead and pick them now. Okay, Denver's up. Who was Denver? Denver is Barry. Let me clean up real quick. Draft recap. Adolfo Archer. Bengals select linebacker Adolfo Archer. Okay. So Will Renaldi. So this is DPs. Again, no flag traits, 783 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's out of Duke, so he should be smart. Strength, he's 6'1", 187, 8 agility, 5 intelligence. That's a little bit of a problem, but again, this will compensate. 10 speed, 10 hands, which means that he's going to be hard to cover, and he's going to catch a lot of things. The agility won't be enough to act as a strong positive to help him catch more, but he doesn't need that much help. Personality is pretty crummy, but this is a guy that can go vertical really easily, and it's going to make a lot of people miserable. Adolfo Archer, he's another one of those inside linebacker types. He's a thumper, 6'4", 245. He can play on the line if you wanted. Strength of 8, so that's not bad. Agility 6, that's not great. His intelligence is really an issue, and if I was Cincinnati's coach, I would look at moving him to defensive end more than likely. 10 tackling, he's going to tackle anything that gets in his way. He's got good speed. He's got decent hands. His endurance is a little bit of a concern. Uh, all in all, not a bad inside linebacker, but on the outside, probably not all that functional. It looks like Barry may have a list as well. Barry selects Ian Banks, so let's go ahead and select him for you. Draft recap. Mr. Banks is a box safety, so that means he's going to be good against the run. 95 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries in his career at Oregon, so he's a duck. That's really good strength for strong safety. Agility 10, really good box safety trait. 6 intelligence, not that great, but he's got good tackling, good speed, good hands. Definitely is a box safety because he has a 7 at linebacker. You may even be able to move him to linebacker if you wanted to. But you play this guy near the line, and very few people are going to get past him. So that is a solid pick for this part of the draft. Now we're up to Carolina. If I remember, Carolina CPU, San Francisco, Houston. Houston CPU, San Francisco's Joe, if I remember correctly. So I'll pick for Carolina, and then it'll be Joe's. I'm just gonna let CPU pick this. Go take a look here real quick. So he picked there. Panthers pick wide receiver Arnold Neal. And he's got a list, but Joe. Okay, so, and then we have one more pick, and then I will wrap up the draft with some thoughts. Love to hear anybody's thoughts in chat, if they have any as well. I know we only have like, I think 4 people left on, but maybe 3. But all in all, thank you for your time today. This is going faster than WWPF's draft, but um, this one's a little harder for me because with WWPF, I'm so indoctrinated into SNCFL that I know the players coming out, even the players that aren't part of my teams. Whereas this is a startup league, so there's less indoctrination. Like I can't quote their stats easily. I don't have the other league up. That would just be too much. If I had someone else doing this with me, I would do that. But otherwise, you'd be waiting long periods of time for me to switch back and forth. I will tell you that generally, I like the top 10. I think the top 10 was really good. Hayward is not someone I would have seen in the top 10. Goforth is someone I expected to go into the later rounds, but he's definitely top 10 capable. A little shocked about where Hurley came down. Um, Parr is about where I thought he would be. Gagnon was picked higher than I thought he would be, but that's no slight against Gagnon. He's actually a really good cornerback. Uh, it was interesting for me to see. I thought that Driscoll would actually go before Larson. I know that in this case, Rick's probably really happy that didn't happen because he got the guy he wanted. And then a little shocked to see Bryson go number two. I thought Bryson would be in the kind of 10 through 20 range. But two quarterbacks went in the first top two, so it's just interesting. What's going on? Okay, Kevin, if you're listening, go ahead and put it in. Put it in the DM. I'll hold off on the Houston pick. Let me see here real quick. And just so everyone knows, we have movement for the 32nd pick. So I'm going to give. I'm not really worried about Joe because it looks like he has a pit list. So in fact, we're just going to go ahead and process that one draft. And now I'm a hold hill. We'll take a look at that real quick while I see what this pick is going to be. This trade's going to be. So 49ers take Kuntz. Rod, it's Roger, not Robert, Darren. 7 agility, 7 intelligence. Not great. He's 6'3", but he doesn't play with size. Um, but 10 speed, 9 hands, those are definitely good. His endurance could be better. But again, like a lot of these guys, he can also play tight end. So uh, he's a possession wide receiver. That makes sense. So short to medium routes, you're going to get more out of him than trying to put him into long routes. So I'd almost look at a West Coast offense for this type of guy. Um, so we do have movement at the 32 pick. So give me a second, and we'll go see how that's going to fall out. Let's see. Just give me a second, everyone. I have to look at this trade. Where's my little spreadsheet that I have? So I'm gonna talk to Phil Space while I'm doing this, so just give me a second because I gotta run some calculations real quick, just to make sure I've got this right. I'll just go against the Pout PDF. Oops, that's not right. Where's that? There it is. Okay, so Kevin is proposing. So this is the 32nd pick. It carries a weight of 184. So this goes third. What team is Kevin again? He's LA, if I remember. Just bear with me, everyone. 184. Where are they picking? San Diego, Los Angeles. So they're picking 8. It was third. They pick 867 plus 149. So it's equals this times 0.8. Equals this times 0.8. Equals this times this here. Equal just equals that. Take this. Okay, so Kevin, the trade will go through, and I'll select it. Give me a second. I gotta pop out here. So the trade will be between. I need to do trade players. So the trade will be between Houston and LA. And Houston. So it'll be this year's third and next year's second for the first pick. And just so everyone knows, is the pick for the 32nd is valued at 184 San Diego's value is 80% of 149 for the second next deal, and then our third pick is 67. So it comes out to 186 against 184. So it maps out. Just make sure I got this right. Okay, so that pick is now LA's. Let's go back in. And Kevin's told me who he's picking, so give me a second. Linebacker, where are you? There he is. Oops, there we go. Okay, so we'll take a look at that real quick. Um, so that was the final pick of the first round, was Deshaun Aponte, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. I think you're going to be happy with this guy, Kevin. In my eyes, he's probably one of the best linebackers in the draft. So 7 strength, 9 agility, 6 intelligence. Intelligence is the only thing I worry about with him. 9 tackling, 9 speed, 10 endurance. This is an every down player, 10 linebacker knowledge. He's got a horrible disposition, but who cares? And just an arrogant professional, which is probably really in line with his personality traits. So great pick, Hill. He's someone I had high on my board. I'm just going to go back real quick and recap a couple things, and then I'm going to go ahead and end the stream because there's some things I need to do before I have to take care of some things later. Not a shock that only a single running back was taken in the first round. Michelle was really the only one that was worth it. A little bit shocked about the number of wide receivers, but maybe not. This was a wide receiver heavy draft. Um, think it's interesting that Aponte went after Bravo and Haywood, although Bravo I could see being higher than that. And that's a really good pick, by the way. Odin dropped farther than I thought he would. I didn't expect him to be available in the middle first round. McCool, so Kevin had a pretty good draft with Ponte and McCool. Um, Bryson, I think, was drafted too high, just because while he's really, really good, I think that he's potentially, to use the B word, there's a good chance he could be a bust. Goodman, not shocked to see him go first. As you can see, Goodman he's got good agility, good intelligence. He's got speed. He's a mobile quarterback. Um, a little shocked to see Gagnon go this high, but it's not a bad shock. Gagnon's really good. Rick's probably really happy Driscoll fell to him and Larson went before. Um, Outside of that, there weren't all that many shocks. I was a little bit shocked that Hurley dropped all the way to 7, but Don's probably really happy about that. And then we only had like one defensive tackle go. I think we only had like one strong safety go as well. Had a couple free safeties, so Newman and Lyle definitely are worth the picks. Um, so overall, I think most of the picks were spot on. So there were no obvious, this guy shouldn't be a first round pick. I think all in all, really solid picks. So great job, everyone. I'm going to put the draft file up here in a few minutes. But thank you for spending close to 2 hours with me today. Sorry it took so long. I am going to try to get someone to help me with these going forward, just because they're a little bit of a handful. But thank you for your time tonight, and I will probably put up a stream at some point later that talks about the leagues, both GMCFL and GMPFL. Again, this is an owner league as opposed to the normal leagues we run at SimNation, where you can modify things, but the playbooks are only the playbooks of your coaches. So that'll create a dynamic. Plus, it has fog of war, so the ratings are 1 to 10 instead of 1 to 100, which means that you don't know for certainty what people's skills are. But my name's Darren here at SimNation. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for your participation in the league. Hope everyone has a great Sunday, the Sunday before New Year's, and that you have a safe New Year's. Talk to you later. Thank you. I'm going to wrap the stream up now.